Hello, welcome back. In our last videos, we went over variables, and today we're going to go over data types. And I brought up our handy dandy chatgpt to help teach us on this video. So in Rust, data types can be broadly categorized in two groups, scalar types and compound types. A scalar type represents a single value, while compound types are a group of multiple values. So the basic types in your scalar types are integers, which is numbers like 1, 100, and so forth. Floating point numbers, an example of a floating point number would be 3.14 or pi. Anything with a decimal or a fraction would be considered a floating point number. You also have Booleans in scalar types, and Booleans are either true or false. And then you have characters, which is char. And I guess you could consider strings as characters too. For compound types, you have tuples, you have arrays, and you have structs and enums. A tuple is a fixed collection of values where each can be a different data type. An array is a fixed collection of values, but they have to be the same data type. So you can't mix strings and integers and things like that inside your array. A struct is a common data type, is a custom data type. We'll go over that more in later videos along with the enums. For right now, let's go back to tuples and let's see an example of a tuple. So our example of our tuples, I already have the code printed out here. Okay, so our example of tuples is here. We declare it by saying let, and then we name it my tuple. You can name it whatever you want as long as it's in the right convention. And if you notice here, we have an integer, we have a floating point number, we have a string, and we have a character. And then when we access it, we're using the print line just to show you guys how it works. We're using the variable placeholders, and if you notice there's 4 here, just like there is inside of our tuple. And we start with the number 0, not the number 1 inside tuples and arrays. So here we're going to print out my tuple.0, which is 42, my tuple.2, which is hello, my tuple.1, which is 3.14, and my tuple.3, which is the letter A. So let's go ahead and check our source code, make sure I didn't make any typos in there. And of course, I'm missing my function statement at the front here. Remember, inside your programs, your function main is your entry points into your programs. So if we go here, we type in function main. Now this should work. We'll do a cargo check just to make sure there's no typos. And now we'll run it. And you can see here it printed out exactly like we wanted. Now let's take a look at an array and how it's different. So we're going to look at our code again, and I have an example of an array in here. Okay. If you notice the difference here between the tuple and the array, in the array we're still declaring it with the let, and whatever we wanted to name our array, we can name this your array or whatever you wanted to name it. But the next part is different than what you have in a tuple. The next part is you're declaring the data type, so we're saying it's the integer of 32 bits, and we have 5 elements in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's the difference between a tuple and array, is you have to declare the data type in the elements. Now if you notice here, we can print out all the elements at one time using our variable placeholder with the colons question mark and then the array name, and that will print it all out. Or you can print out each individual element separately. And this is good if you have an if statement and you want to find if one of the values in the array equals something. So this is good to have, so you can call each one out individually. So if we go ahead and run this, let's just do cargo check first, just to make sure there's no typos. Now we'll run it, and you can see how that printed out. So that's the difference between your arrays and your tuples. Arrays you could do a little bit more with. You can use functions to figure out how many elements are in an array, just in case you don't know. You can add elements to an array, and you can delete elements from an array. The difference in Rust between other languages is when you're adding and deleting elements in arrays. You can do that like in PHP or Python. You could say array.add, and it would add to the end of it. But in Rust, it's a little bit different. You're using something called vectors. In vectors, you can have a increase in or decrease in size in your elements, but they still have to be. It still has to be set with the same data type, so you can't change that. And that's the difference between using Rust compared to other languages, is how you actually add or delete elements. So you would have to change your array to a vector. And we can see an example of this. So here we're just going to modify our source code. So instead of calling it an array, we're going to call it a vector. And we're also using the mutatable keyword here, so mute. And it's my vector. And we're telling it that we want it to be the integer types. And we're saying vector equals new. And this is how we add elements to it. We add a push method to it and then we're putting numbers in here that we want to push out to. So if we modify this code just a little bit, so instead of saying my vector push 1, let's try 21 and see what happens. So if we do our cargo check, no typos, now we can do our cargo run. And we can see that it actually printed out all the elements, and it printed out 21 instead of 1 where we changed that. And that's the difference between arrays and vectors and Rust. So remember, in other programming languages you can add and delete elements to arrays, but in Rust you have to use vectors. Now let's take a look at a Boolean. So building off of our chatgpt program that we installed or created the other day in Linux, if you watched my video for that. If not, you can always go back and watch it. We'll just ask it, show me an example of a Boolean in Rust. So I had to modify our question a little bit because ChatGPT might be getting overloaded. So if we take this example they gave us and we modify our source code again, I'm actually going to give a different type of example here. True. So we're saying if is rainy is not equal true, print line. And I just want to see if I have my if statement right. It's been a while since I wrote one for Rust, so let's just see if my if statement works right. So we're getting this message here and saying that is sunny isn't used. So that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that my if statement was right. So if we add another if statement, now this should work. Let's try our cargo check again. And we didn't actually specify the two equal signs. So a conditional expression, we need to have two equal signs. So if we go back and we correct that, now we should get the check to work properly. And we can see it is rainy because it's true, and then we said if it's it's rainy because it's not true because we set the variables false, and if it's sunny, it is true, so it printed that out, and that's how that works. So if you want to go back and you want to look at the code again, there it is. So we say if sunny equals true, and we're saying if sunny equals true, print it out. If rainy not equals true, print out is raining. Now we could probably use the else statement in here. So if we just go back and change our code just a little bit more, we could put an else statement in here. Now we are missing something here with our else statement. We forgot to put it in our bracket. There we go. There's our curly brace. So if we go back here, line it up properly, now this should work. But we're going to change rainy to is rainy equals true up here. Then I want to do our cargo check to make sure I didn't make a typo there, because I'm not 100% confident I didn't make a typo. I didn't, okay. And we can see now that it printed out our else statement. So if we go back and look at the code again, we can see what we did here. We changed that is rainy equals true. So then when we checked it, we said if it's not true, that's the exclamation point equals not true, then print it's raining. And if it is true, print it's not raining. And that's your data types, guys. That's your Booleans. That's your compound data types, your scalar types. And we are going to go over, like I said, the enums, and we're going to go over the data structs in later videos. But for now, I just wanted to show you guys how that works. And if you guys wanted to see, we could also do an example of a char. So we could sit here and we could say, we could change our code just a little bit, modify it just a little bit so we don't have to start everything all over. sorry about that. We can say let z, I'm going to call that char. I'm going to say what we want it to equal. Then we'll put in a single quote. Let's say we're going to say let z equals capital T. And then we'll print that line out. And let's just run our code one more time. We'll do cargo check, make sure I didn't make another typo. Of course I did. We can see I put an I in the letter print line. So we need to go back and change this right here. We'll take out the print line. And now it's print ln. Try it again. And there we go. And that's a char. If you guys have any questions or anything, please put it in the comments. If you think these videos are helping you guys, please like and subscribe so more people can see them. And thank you. And the next one we should go over functions.